Hi everyone, this is Uncensored and I'm Mariens from Yachts, Mermaids, your host. And this is a Yachting International radio show. And today I am excited. It seems like I'm always excited, but like truly honest, I am honored today because I have a man. I have a man on the other side of the screen. Finally, it's happening. My prayers have been answered. And this amazing man is called Ari. Ari is a current bosun on a 77-meter. And today he's going to be um, taking us through the journey of how he started his yachting career, working against women, and now evolving into working with communion with the women in the industry. So thank you for being here and saying yes, Ari. Welcome to the show.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
So when I said that you started your yachting career working against women and now it has evolved into working in communion with women, what comes up for you?
Well, I think it's a really fair point to say that I didn't have always strong relationships with women, and I didn't perhaps understand what it is that women responded well to. And what I found, and what's really true of my life now in my work life, which is working really well, and actually my relationships as well with my loved ones, with my fiance, even my mother and my sisters, is that they really enjoy having someone around to listen to them and to counsel them, just to help them understand men in general. So that's kind of what I'm doing now, is I just give them someone to listen to and allow them to feel encouraged and that I'm not against them. Whereas originally, if you perhaps rewound 5 years ago to when I started my career, look, it wasn't drastically terrible. I wouldn't say I had terrible relationships, but I just seem to be always getting into arguments with girls. There always seemed to be some sort of misunderstanding, and I couldn't rise above it, and I would think that this person was stupid and that person was that. And the truth of the tale is that everyone has something going on behind the scenes. And it wasn't until probably fairly recently, maybe 2.5 years ago, that I guess as I was getting older, I was finding that the girls were coming in younger, and there was bigger and a bigger age gap. And I was feeling like these girls were like my little sisters, and I naturally gravitated into a brotherly role. And then I was seeing how well they responded to that, and I adapted that, and I started doing that with a lot of the relationships in all my life with women, and it just works so positively for me. And to this day, I find that I just have so many. I've always had a few girlfriends around, just friends that are girls, and I've gotten along with them. But I'm just finding common ground with women in general so much easier now when I'm trying to establish that dynamic, as if I am their brother. I'm here to listen to them. I'm here to look after them if they need it, and I'm here to offer them counsel if they need it. And if they don't need it, don't worry about it. I'll take it back. It's all good.
So how does this translate in an environment, right? In a working environment, because obviously this is a personal choice, an individual thing that you're doing, right? But you are part of a team, right? Of a deck team, and obviously there's many other men around you on board. Is this something that you implement as well on your team, and you guide them into learning how to do this, or how to actually be there for the female on board, or this is something that you just kind of do and lead by example and hopefully they pick up on it?
Yeah, look, it's both. Absolutely. I definitely do lead by example. I've got actually a great group of guys working for me, really lovely and respectful. And that's by design. We've chosen and picked that team to be that way. We've opted to go for guys, mostly younger guys, that have good morals, good values. And the guys that didn't, we got rid of them. We didn't want them about. So what we try to do is, commonly we'll find on boats that there's there can be a negative dynamic in which the girls are constantly cleaning up after the boys, and it's just not nice. It's not a nice way to live, especially for the girls. No one wants to feel like they're a maid for their peers, But we do it as a job. We look after the person that's paying our salary, and I think everyone's on board with that. But I don't really feel like, for example, the crew mess is everyone's responsibility. You shouldn't to have some guys sitting there watching one of the interior girls unstack a dishwasher and not help is, to me, a criminal offence. You shouldn't be doing that. And as far as I'm concerned, when I'm about it, it doesn't happen, because it's a terrible way to make someone feel. I wouldn't like it if someone did exactly the same thing to me. If someone spilt coffee all over the teak and then didn't at least offer to help me clean it up, I would think pretty poorly of that person. So it's the same kind of thing. And even worse, because the crew mess is, as I said, everyone's responsibility. So it's just things like that, just respecting the role of the women on board, and perhaps just acknowledging the difficulty of it. And just from my team, I don't want any arguments with the interior about silly things like that. It's not good for anybody at all, and it's added to the harmonious nature of our vessel. And for the most part, all boats have dramas, but I feel we have definitely benefited from that, from just perhaps listening to each other, acknowledging the difficulty of the interior role, because I do believe the interior role has unique challenges. It's really, really difficult. I don't think a lot of people understand and give credit to how difficult that role is. If you're locked inside for weeks on end without getting much sunshine, what's going to go? Your mentality, your emotional status is really going to deteriorate quite quickly. So you have to be pertinent to that. You have to really acknowledge some things. And so if you're seeing that someone's having a tough time, try to look at the conditions they're under and be empathetic towards that. Because, some people would say some misogynistic, sexist remark about a girl being a bitch. And you're like, you know what? She's been inside for 2 weeks straight. Just acknowledge that, be respectful of that. And if you give her a nice rub on the shoulder and make her a coffee, maybe she'll feel a whole lot better. And then, that's going to be, and that's what it is, really. I think that's really where it all comes from. It's just being empathetic towards how difficult all our roles are in different ways, but especially the interior.
Well, well, thank you. I'm saying thank you from all the women to you, and for what you are doing, what the example that you're setting, not only in the industry, but, as a human being and as a male, which is really interesting to me, because there's quite a few things came up as you're talking. And one of the things is that when you said, we don't know what's happening to the other person, we have to look at, the bigger picture of what's the scenario that they're in, right? And all that. And I totally agree. And also on top of it, a lot of the things, one thing that I think a lot of people, even including women, don't realize is that women have cycles and rhythms like everybody, but especially a monthly cycle. Literally, you're going up and down through your entire month. And if women don't understand where they at, it's going to be even harder for male to understand where they are. But just having that consciousness of what, because there is a lot of remarks of oh, she's on her period, she got on the cycle, or all this stuff. And it's well, there is a reason behind all this. It's scientific stuff. It's not just and I think that because of that kind of connotation of you're gonna be there, I feel like there's this story that women tell themselves, now, even if I'm bleeding, now, even if I'm super low on energy, because literally that's what's happening during that time, I have to perform even more, and I have to show that I can do this and what they're doing and bleed at the same time and not sound like I'm a crazy person. And although you're probably going to sound like it because you're not even in tune with your body, right? And that's what's going to happen. So I just think there's a lot of unconsciousness around this topic, and it's something that we deal with on a daily basis, and we're on a boat in such a tight quarters, and it's just, I think starting to understand just human nature, in the body of the person is going to be key. So when I say this, what comes up for you?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, 100%. I'm really fortunate in my ability to be empathetic towards women, because I have a wonderful partner. We communicate very strongly. And absolutely, I understand the cycle of women it's a hormonal roller coaster. So of course it's going to influence how you feel and how you behave as well. And I don't think I, I don't know any women that use it an excuse, but it is a reason. It is a reason why perhaps they feel a little irrational about certain things. But it's just that, you know. I can be empathetic towards it. I can understand how horrible that must feel to almost feel like an imposter in your own mind sometimes, to not be able to formulate and understand rationally why you feel a certain way. It would be really, really tough. So, and we all know all women experience this differently. My partner, for example, I think she's on the lower end of the spectrum, but she tells me she feels crazy sometimes. And then I've got another very close girlfriend who I know that she doesn't really want to talk to anyone for a week every month. So I just leave her alone. That's what she wants.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have made it a point in my career for the past few years that I talk to the captain, you know, and the deck crew, and I educate him on this, because you can't expect people to have a knowledge that they just don't have, right? Like it's kind of like you have to educate them, and not
Sure.
only men, but actually educating women as well, because most of them are so disconnected to their body that, you know, this is why they think they're going crazy. You know, it's just a disconnection and not understanding what is actually being asked. And one of the things that I have found is that when I approach captains and I approach, you know, head of departments, and I say, you know, when my female team, when somebody gets their cycle, their period, that day they're either going to have it off or half day off or just do laundry, or because they need to have that time to just rest. So because of the rest, they'll be able to cycle way better and more functional and energetically throughout the entire month. So, but another thing that came up was, so this whole scenario on your vessel and these amazing things that you guys are doing and how you're interacting with each other, is this something that you implemented? Is this something that the captain of the vessel have that mindset? Like, obviously this is a journey, right? I'm sure that it didn't just start it this way. So can you talk a little bit about that journey of where it started and how it evolved? Like, you even said that you guys got rid of the people that were not in alignment with the values and morals of, you know, the crew and how you guys want to run the vessel.
Yeah, definitely. I've actually been working on and off with my captain for my entire career. I've worked for 4 captains, but I've touched base with this captain a couple of times. I've come and worked for him, and now I've currently been with him for another 2.5 years. So probably 3.5 out of my 5 years I've worked for him, and he's a massive role model for me. And he has a wonderful relationship with women in general. We have a very different dynamic, him and I, in the way that we have a relationships with women, but they're both very positive. So it's excellent. From his point of view, he is a captain that likes to establish and put people in place, and he likes to trust them to be decision makers, which is why I flourish, because I'm quite assertive. I like to make my own decisions, and so under him I've really blossomed. And so from him, I think there is an excellent culture. What, unfortunately, and I'll just talk very vaguely about this because it's something I shouldn't really mention names about, but because of his approach, because he likes to put in these people and leave them to their own devices and trust that they're doing a good job. We had a scenario in which he put a person that was senior to me in a position, and then a few of us had some negative relationships with this person, and then it so happened that on one evening he went out and he sexually harassed one of the girls on the boat. And I wasn't there at the time, but then I heard about it the next day. And for me, that was unforgivable. I don't want to work with a person like that. So I confronted the person and confirmed that it was true. And then I marched him straight to the captain and I said, he's no longer working for us anymore. I'm done. We're not. It's me or him. I'm not working on a boat with a person like this. You can't treat people like that. And my captain gave me full support. He also confirmed it was true. He got the information from the people. We kept him on the boat because we needed him for minimum manning. But 3 days later, we got rid of him. And he was a senior person on the boat. So, if I saw that person to this day, I'm quite upset with that person. If I was to see them again, I would have some very choice words for them. It's not something that I forgive easily, especially because he didn't show much remorse about the whole thing. But to have that kind of support from the very top felt really good, to know, because I knew if I stomped my feet and made a big ruckus that this guy was going to go. I knew that there was no way that my captain wasn't going to support me in that, and support the girl as well. And she actually didn't really think too much of it. Well, she didn't make an open point of it. Who knows? Quietly, she could have been really, really torn up inside, but she didn't present as being particularly too worried about the whole thing. She was upset that someone had taken advantage of her in that way, but she also had that unfortunate, that negative connotation where, boys will be boys. He was just being a boy. For me, it's unacceptable. We're colleagues. You don't do that to someone that you work with. You don't do that to anyone, actually, but, you set the line, especially in the workplace. So, yeah, to round that all up, to know that I had the support of the captain, I knew in my heart of hearts I did. I felt really strongly that I could act proactively in that way and firmly. And I got the result I wanted in the end, because we got rid of that guy who was a really bad egg.
And I applaud you, for doing that and for standing up and for setting your boundaries and actually, walking the talk, right? And I think this is really important topic because one of the things that you just said was that, the mindset of like, oh, boys are boys, this is yachting, all these bullshit stories that we tell ourselves to not confront what we know is not in alignment with our morals and values, and keep ourselves quiet, basically, because we may not want to lose our job, or because whatever we bullshit believe, so I think that this is a great example for all you guys out there that have been in this situation and not have actually done what Ari did, to see somebody actually show how easy it is. Just literally speak up. And on our previous show, if you haven't watched it, I invite you to. We talk about healing trauma from if you're on a boat and you experience sexual assault or sexual harassment and all this stuff. And one of the things that the guest Jesse talked about was that we need more men that know that this stuff is not okay, to actually speak up. We need that protective role. We need that warrior energy around us, not only for women, but also for the other men, because this not just happens to women, it's maybe the majority, but it may also happen to a male. And I think that you are showing that, and that it's so how do you feel in that role? Is it something that comes natural to you? Is it something that you had to, throughout the years, learn, in your career? Do you think this is something that you would have done the first year of yachting?
No, definitely not.
From like a deckhand, as a deckhand, you would be like, no, this is not okay. I'm putting my foot down.
I don't think I would have done that 5 years ago.
So what has changed from when you started to now? What made you have a voice?
I think especially because the girl it happened to, I felt very responsible for her, and I cared for her a lot. I felt like she was my little sister. I still do. She's a wonderful person. And for one, I felt strongly about her enough that I needed to act. If I didn't have the relationship with a person, perhaps I wouldn't have been so invested. And I've become more confident in myself in that 5 years, in my own personal journey. And I've had the support of a wonderful partner. We've been together for now 4 years of my 5 years in yachting. And especially in the last few years, she's helped me understand how strong I can be as well. which is wonderful, which is what you need in a relationship. And I'm doing the same for her. So, you know, we both strengthened each other. And so for me, it seemed I would have almost felt ashamed not to have done something at that point, further along down my journey. Whereas if that happened, like I was saying 5 years ago, I would have been afraid. I would have been scared to. I would have been thinking too much about the consequences of what was going to happen to me, as opposed to the consequences of how I'd feel morally if I didn't do something, which is, to me, less palatable now. To me, if I had to look back now and think that I didn't do anything, I would feel pretty terrible about myself. I'd feel pretty shit. So I'm really happy I did something. Whereas the fear, I think, would have been too much, perhaps 5 years ago. I know I'm not really explaining well how I evolved in that way. There's a lot of factors there. I think it's getting older as well, being more confident within myself, being happy within my relationship, the strong bonds I felt I had towards the victim, and me also knowing that for the good of the team, this person was not good to have around. And if this is going to happen now, it's tolerated, it's going to get worse. So I felt that I had to be proactive. I had to act.
Yeah, because you're not just protecting the person that happened, you're actually protecting the entire team at the end of the day.
Indeed.
And not only the team, it could also be guests and everybody that's involved in the vessel. So do you feel that after this situation, you know, because you said that one of the reasons that you felt strongly enough to say, you know what, no matter what, I'm going to put my step down and this is what I'm going to say. It was because you had a really strong relationship and bond to the person that this happened to. Do you feel that was just like that one kickstart that you needed in order for now, no matter who the person that may be going through something like this that you witness, you feel that you can just, you know, step up and speak up about it and say, no, this is not okay? Or do you feel that you still wouldn't really talk about it unless you feel strongly about the person that happened to?
No, definitely. I think I actually haven't, it hasn't been a sentient thought for me. Perhaps I hadn't consciously thought about that, but definitely now that situation changed my view on that. And I would not tolerate that happening to anyone now. And I guess spurred on by the confidence of achieving the result I wanted, which is to get rid of the bad apple, then that would make me feel very confident having to do that again for anybody that happened to, whether that be a man or a woman, you know. But especially now, because on my boat, with very few exceptions, all the girls on the boat and I have a wonderful, wonderful relationship, very, very strong, you know, in varying degrees, but all super, super positive. So it would be hard for me to imagine it happening to any one of those people and me not acting. But if I was to a hypothetical situation with someone that I didn't know and didn't care about, I would still act. I still would, because I felt empowered by it, I suppose. I feel empowered by it now. I feel empowered by showing people that they can act, and I feel empowered to lend my strength to someone that perhaps isn't feeling strong in the moment.
Those were really beautiful words, to lend your strength. That's amazing. Like it resonated when you said that, because it's not that you're giving power, you're being that bridge for another person to feel supported enough to gain their strength back, basically. Yeah,
that's what men can do the most for women. It's not about fighting the fight for the woman that may need, perhaps she needs the fight fought for at that moment, but what she needs really is she needs support. She needs help understanding and navigating the masculine world sometimes, because believe it or not, men are hard to understand. So that's how men can be of the best support. You know, if there's a dispute happening, you know, probably one of the worst things you can do is just jump in, guns blazing, and start yelling at some guy that's having a dispute, having an argument with a woman. But perhaps you can talk to her later on and say, wow, what was going on there? See if there's any counsel you can offer her, and see if there's any support, and make her feel empowered, and tell her all her good qualities and why she deserves a seat at the table, why she deserves to be acknowledged and why she deserves not to be treated that way as well, and what she can do in the future to perhaps to eliminate that kind of behavior from other people. But yes, if you have to step in, you have to step in. But ideally, in an ideal world, what you're doing, empowerment means to exactly what I'm saying, lend that strength as opposed to being the strength.
Yeah, and it goes both ways, right? So for me, how, as a woman, right, how can we support you guys? How can we be better co-workers, from a woman to a man? How can we hold space for you guys? Like, what is it that men need, or that you feel that that you guys need in order to blossom, in order to feel that you can be that protective role, that you can step, that you're being respected as well? Yeah, so I just kind of want to know what's the other side, right?
Yeah, definitely. I naturally fall into a dynamic where I have a nice banter relationship with the girls. We tease each other, we laugh at each other. That's always fun. But some girls really don't like that, so you can't do that. So you just have to go into that nurturing relationship. Men in general also like to be nurtured. They like to they love the gentle side of women. Sometimes we love the super sharp wit and the humor and all that, and that's fantastic as well. But I'd say that it's more common that men can more easily appreciate the nurturing side of women, because women do tend to be better nurturers than men, and they respond well to it. And it's not to say, if a woman isn't naturally a nurturer, she shouldn't have to force it. I wouldn't say that either. But I think in viewing the relationships on the boat, I wouldn't say with me, because I don't really care, but definitely like looking at some of the guys, that do have positive relationships, perhaps only some of the girls on the boat. It's the girls that are natural nurturers that they find it easier to get along with them, I suppose.
So how can you give me an example of what that looks like in a scenario on a boat, of like a woman that's being more nurturer versus not so nurturing, right? Because I think that a lot of women tend to go into their masculine side, because it's like, oh, I'm in a man's world, I have to be like a man, so I have to like be strict and rigid and not flow and not be intuitive and naturally nurturer, because we give birth to life, so obviously it's like a very natural thing as a woman, as an embodiment of the feminine energy. So what does it look like from a male perspective to see a woman in that archetype of being the nurturer on a daily basis, crew interaction?
Yeah, so you have to be quite careful with this, because what I'm going to say perhaps is a lot of people are going to disagree with, and it's also in a professional environment, it would be frowned upon in the most part. But where yachts differ is that yachts are also a professional environments, but we also live together, so we do develop strong bonds. And I find physical contact, not in a sexual way, you have to be really, really careful with that, but physical contact is a wonderful bonder. So gentle touches on the elbow and the arm immediately can placate a man. Yeah. I noticed that, just like the gentle. If a girl asks for something, one of the best examples of this is we have a chief stewardess who is relatively new to the boat, and when she's really on, like I like to watch the dynamics between people and how it works. When she's really on and she's getting a lot, it's a tough job to be a chief stewardess, because you're like the police, you're chasing after everyone. And that's what she's doing, is that when she's on and she's doing it subconsciously, what she does is she does this thing where she just touches the guy on the elbow, the crook of the elbow, and then has a request. And it's extremely reinforcing. She'll get what she wants 99% of the time, but if she comes in as a guy would, say the chief stewardess is asking one of just the newer deckhands, if she comes up and as the chief officer would and sort of barks an order at him, he's not going to respond very positively to that. It's interesting, because I don't feel it has to be, it's unfair, I suppose, that women can't come in guns blazing like that. But I think, and we have to just face reality sometimes. There is a dynamic that seems to work better.
I
And
also
that
think
to
it's
me,
not natural, it's not the natural feminine way to bark. You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah,
We are taught to bark because we think that if we don't bark, we're not going to be heard.
sure, yeah.
But the reality is that actually we are not being heard because we're barking. If we just
Yes.
take a step back and just tune in into our feminine side, into our soft side, and just come in softly, then there's that safety for the other person to open up, because nobody
Yeah,
opens up if they don't feel safe.
yeah,
Nobody communicates talk if they don't feel there's a safe container around them. And that could be, approached through a laugh, like you said, or just a simple touch of like, hey, like, I see you, I'm acknowledging you, right? And then you can, that the reciprocation is that the person has your full attention, right?
yes,
Yeah,
yes.
I totally agree with that. So what is your advice for the male crew out there that are wanting to become more like what you have been able to embody in this past few years, but they may still be a little bit afraid of like what people may think, or what that may actually cost them in their job if they actually turn the other side and say, you know what, I'm no longer going to look away. I'm actually going to be aligned with my morals and values, and when something's not right, I'm going to talk about it, and I'm going to start approaching women with respect, instead of yeah.
Yeah, it's a great question. What can they do? Look, first of all, I think you have to be confident in the fact of your own abilities. And the fact is, if you were on a vessel and a situation like the situation that happened to myself and the others on the boat happened, if that arose, and you chose to speak up, and for whatever reason it didn't work out for you and you were dismissed, you know what? You never wanted to be there anyway. That's a terrible place to be. So get out of there. That's one. That's a massive red flag. Two, if you explain that story without naming names, you got to be very careful about naming names in this industry. If you explain this story, well, one, MLC would probably have something to say about it. I think you'd be well protected. But if you did want to go find another boat and get a job, I think they'd be very proud of you for having said that, having stuck up. And to me, it would really speak to someone's character. And I would say, you know what, this guy, as long as he's not a troublemaker in other regards of his life, because it is rocking the boat, but it's rocking the boat for a very good reason. So when the boat needs to be rocked, you need to rock it. So in that situation, if I was to hear about that and someone had applied and I'd heard that story, I would fully support having a person like that on the boat. And I think that with the way things are going these days, most of us would. I think it is actually now a rarity. It's still there. It's still around. These really negative people that sort of downgrade the entire industry. But I feel it's becoming less and less common, which is really, really great. So I'd say be brave, back yourself, and if it doesn't work out for you on this boat, I think 90% of the time it will. You'll get the result you want. If it doesn't, then you're going to find an even better place to land.
Absolutely. And I kind of want to wrap it up with, what are the qualities that when we are going to an interview with a captain, what are the qualities that you can give us to look out for, so we know that we are approaching a person that will protect our safety, and not just our safety when it comes down to fire and all that stuff, but actually our mental health, our physical health and all that stuff, and especially around sexual abuse and sexual harassment and bullying and all that stuff. Like, what is it that are those key little things that you're like, that guy, yes, that's the one that you want to work with?
Well, how many female friends does he have? If he's got no female friends, that speaks a lot to me. Like, if you don't have the capacity to have non-sexual relationships with women, it really tells me where your motivations lie. You could be a red-blooded male with all the desires and urges in the world, but that doesn't restrict you from not having relationships with women. And I feel that when I find a guy or I see a guy and he has no girlfriends, I know exactly what kind of guy that is. It speaks volumes to me. So you could, if you were to ask someone, if you were in the interview process of talking with someone and you were to ask them about what relationships they have with females, if he says, "Oh, I don't really have any female friends," that's a done deal for me. I don't need a person like that around, because you need to have female friends, because we've got 10 females on the boat and we're all friends. So how are you gonna gel? Especially if you're trying to sleep with every single one of them, it just doesn't work. Uh, that to me is a really, really easy one to spot. But I suppose there'd be subtler things as well. Um, how people carry themselves, how they talk. I think we know intuitively. You can tell intuitively quite quickly how these people are, if they're a really bad apple.
Mm. Yeah, I guess it's true, but I guess some people may not be as intuitive or connected to their intuition as you are, obviously. So, do you think, like, this is one of the things that I do in the interview process? I straight up ask, like, what's the policy of sexual harassment, sexual abuse? Like, what's the policy for this? What happens when this situation happens? Because that right there, I'm putting the person on the spot, and I'm going to know exactly what's going to happen to me if it does happen, right? And if they're kind of like, oh, or I don't want to talk about it, or I don't know, that for me is like, okay, I don't want to work with you, because you should have a straight up answer, and I felt that I'm safe and protected under your leadership, right? So do you think
Definitely.
that's like a fair thing to do?
I think that's 100% a fair thing to do. I think everyone has the right to defend themselves and be prepared. So I think that's absolutely. If you're a woman getting a job on the boat, then ask them about what their sexual harassment policy is. I think that's excellent. Why wouldn't you do that? And the same goes for if you were interviewing a guy that was coming onto a boat, you'd say, how do you feel? What kind of sexual harassment policy should we have on board? And it'd be good to have a candidate who's coming forward for a prospective job, have them just have a think about it. They probably haven't thought about it a lot as a guy, because it's not something you need to deal with. So it's just to get those gears working in their mind, and for them to actually start thinking, oh, that'd be really shit if they didn't have something in place. And then you could tell them and just feel out their response to it. If you're an interviewing captain, and feel out their response to what they're like, and you'd know pretty quickly if their shoulders slump and they're like, oh no, then you're like, oh, okay. If you don't like that we've got a sexual harassment policy in place, then if that's bad news to you, then that sucks. But if they're excited by it, if they're enthused by it, then you're probably onto a winner. It's probably a person you want to have around.
Totally. Well, thank you so much, Ari, for taking time of your life and sharing with us your experience and your wisdom, because it's true wisdom. I'm not just saying it, like I really mean it. And I know that you had a bit of an injury and you're using this downtime, healing time, to be of service to the industry. Before we wrap it up, can you tell us a little bit about what you're doing and how they can find you?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, very quickly. It's all quite unofficial, but I hurt myself recently and I'm on medical leave at home in Nice. I've got a lot of time that I'm dedicating towards people that are trying to establish themselves in the industry. So you might be absolutely brand new, or perhaps you've got a season or 2 seasons under your belt, but you don't quite feel established. I've set up an Instagram. It's superyacht.living, superyacht living. And what I'm trying to gear it towards is just to be a support system. I'm not looking to charge. I don't think I'm ever going to monetize it or make it a business. I don't know if I'm ever going to go down that role, but I want you to know that there are crew within the industry that very much care about new people in the industry. And what I'm trying to do is establish a culture of paying it forward, so that perhaps the people that I talk to, when they become established themselves, they'll be comfortable and they'll be proud to perhaps be mentors themselves and take on some new people. And I feel if we do this, we'll be able to uplift the entire industry from the bottom up, basically. So I'm going to be doing that for at least another 6 weeks, and then hopefully I'll be able to dedicate some time forward going on from that to keep the ball rolling. But I've shot a few videos. I'm doing a 10-part series. I've done 9 parts of it. The 10th video will be up tomorrow, and they're just very short, informal talks about different ways to approach the industry, different things you need to understand. So if people wanted to go to my Instagram and have a look at that, I think it'd be illuminating, and they can shoot me any questions. I'd be more than happy to help them. And I'm happy to meet up with anyone that's in the south of France I can look over CVs. I can chat with you. It's been really, really fun. I've been having a lot of fun with that.
Thank you so much for paying it forward and taking time from your own healing journey to actually give back to the industry, because we definitely need more of this energy, you know, to support each other, because at the end of the day, it's such a small industry and we are literally brothers and sisters once we get in those tiny little quarters.
That's it.
So again, thank you so much for saying yes. I will be tagging everything. So below this video, if you want to contact Ari, I'll just click below. And yeah, is there anything you want to say before we say goodbye?
Well, thank you. It was just really, really nice to have your point of view on things as well. I can tell that you're very passionate about this, and it was really wonderful to hear your views on it. So thank you for having me. It was a real pleasure.
Pleasure is mine. Okay, guys, if you have something to say, wisdom to share, please contact me at info@yachtsmermaids.com. And yeah, so you can be part of the Uncensored show. Okay, until next time. Bye.